Hi, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll be making a basic bodice pattern, and we'll need a tape, a scissors, a tracing wheel, a ruler and a curve, a marker, and a brown paper. So I started by folding my brown paper into two, with my left hand side as a zipper allowance, which is 1.5 inches. So I fold back the zipper allowance, and if you see in the video, I place the front and the back together. So I drew out my shoulder line. From the shoulder line to my bust line is 11 inches. So I marked it out. Then from my shoulder to my waist is 18 inches. And from shoulder to my hip line is 25 inches. So I repeated the same thing at the other end of the brown paper. So I use my ruler to draw out the line, just as I'm doing in the video. This is the shoulder line. This is the bust line, also known as bust point. This is the waistline, and this is the hip line. For the neck depth, I measured out 3 inches wide, which is the standard measurement. You can go for 3.5 or 4 inches, depending on how you want it to be. For the neck length, I went down by 3 inches. You can go down by 6 inches or 7 inches, depending on how you want it to be. Then I use my curve to mark it out. So my shoulder is 16 inches. I divided it into 2, which gives me 8 inches. So I marked it out. For the shoulder slope, I went down by 1 inch from that point. Then I used my ruler to connect from the neck to the point. For my armhole, I divided my bust by 6, then I added 2. My bust is 40. I divided it by 6, which gives me 6.6 plus 2, that is 8.6. So I use my ruler to draw a line from the shoulder slope to the point I marked. I drew a horizontal line from that point, which is now the chest line. For this line, I divided it into 2 and marked. Then I went in by 0.5 inch. I measured round my bust, which gives me 40 inches. I divided it by 4 and I marked 10 inches on the chest line. That is 40 inches divided by 4, which gives me 10 inches. So I use my curve to join the points together, just as I'm doing in the video. The measurement round my bust is 40 inches. So I divided 40 inches by 4, which gives me 10 inches. Then I marked on the bust line. I also added 1 inch allowance on the bust line. For the waistline, the measurement round my waist is 38 inches. So I divided 38 inches by 4, which gives me 9.5 inches. So I measured out 9.5 inches on the waistline. Then I measured out 1 inch for the dart and also 1 inch for allowance. For the hip line, the measurement round my hip is 44 inches. I divided 44 inches by 4, which gives me 11 inches. So I marked 11 inches on the hip line. And also mark 1 inch allowance on the hip line. So I used my ruler to mark all the points together. For the bust span, which is also known as bust to bust measurement, is 8 inches. So I divided 8 inches by 2, which gives me 4. So I measured it on the bust point, the waistline, and the hip line. I used my ruler to mark all the points together. For the dart, I marked out 0.5 inches on both sides on the waistline. Then I marked 1 inch downwards on the bust point. Then I marked 2 inches above the hip line. I used my ruler to join all the points together. Now I'm marking the armhole for the back, which is the point close to the line. For the back neck, I went down by 1 inch and gave a curve. For the side dart, I look for the midpoint between the bust point and the waistline. I use my ruler to mark the 2 points together. I took ½ inch on both sides for the dart. Then I went down by 1 inch from the bust point. I used my ruler to mark the points together. So I replaced the 1 inch dart down the hip line. I drew a line from the center front to the point, just as I'm doing in the video. I used my scissors to cut out the line for the back. I left the armhole for the back and also the neck for the back. I used my tracing wheel to trace out the line to the back. Then I used my scissors to separate the front from the back. In a situation where you don't have a tracing wheel, you can use your marker to mark out the point to the back, just as I'm doing in the video. I use my ruler to mark out the points at the back, or you can just repeat the measurement to the back. It's still the same thing. So I cut off the extra inch because there is no side dart at the back. For the back dart, I went down by 0.5 inches from the bust point. Then I came up by 2 inches from the hip line. Then I took 0.5 inches in between and mark all the points together. Now from the waistline, I went in by 0.5 inches and connected it to the neckline and to the hip line. This is to make the dress to sit perfectly at the back. So I marked out the new zip allowance, and this is how it looks like. I connected it to the neck and also to the hip line. Now this is the new zipper allowance after cutting out the excess fabric. So that is it for the back bodice pattern. For the front, I'll cut the zip allowance and cut out the armhole for the front. Then the neck for the front too. This is the front of the basic body pattern. And this is the back of the basic body pattern. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video.